everyone, this is Anne from Anne Reyes Designs, and today we're going to be talking about a topic that is very important, and that is creating a repository of knowledge. So a knowledge repository is very important because as a designer, you go through a lot of content every single day. So in my day-to-day job, I probably go through like 10 to 20 articles, especially when I'm trying to read up on something like a new feature. It may not be possible that you can come up with an idea right away. You have to keep looking at examples available online. This is important because you don't want to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes you could also be creating templates, folder structures, OKRs, frameworks. So in your day-to-day job, notice that you probably need to document every single thing. And while you're documenting stuff for the company, you might need those documentation later on for yourself as well. So there are parts of that you can copy and you should take away with you actually, not the personal identifiable information part, but the strategy and how you actually executed on those things. Not just for yourself, but the things that you're learning from other people. And this way, whenever you encounter a similar problem in the future or a similar challenge, you would have something to go back to or fall back into. So another reason why you might want to do this is you may want to build something for your own team. So this is something that I've had in multiple teams that I've joined with in the past. So for example, in Uberflip, when I was just a graphic designer there was always someone that needed to maintain all of the repository of patterns and folder structures, and we always had to rely on this person to actually find out where can we find some things like the things that we've done in the past. But if you have like an organized structure, one, an organized way of tagging research, another, if you have guides on like how to use all of the tools that your team might have, templates on like how do you send emails and what sequence do you give that to a person, when do you send reminders if you're trying to conduct a usability test. If you have all of these things written down somewhere, you can benefit from them, and actually you can also probably sell them as a product, but I'm not going to do that. I just want to share all the information that I currently have. So what I'm currently trying to do right now is I have a Notion page for all of the useful links, useful tools, articles, and websites and posts that I find very useful for myself. And this is a very long project because sometimes I have to do interviews with people. I also take on calls from people that want to get into UX, and also I'm trying to create content around this aspect just so that I could share more of this knowledge, not just on YouTube but also on LinkedIn. So where do I store all of that information? It's difficult to track all of them from the history of your, let's say, browser, but if you have them in something as simple as like Google Sheets, that will definitely help you along the way. So actually, if I look behind me, so I'm gonna share with you something that I do for myself. To have this digital notebook, and while I'm supposed to be categorizing everything and it has table of contents and highlights, I'm not using it as well as I should have. And I also have the bad habit of like writing down notes in this way. So I like to write notes with a pen, paper. And these are all of the notes that I've taken from pieces of paper that still need to be digested by myself. So I have to put in time this week to actually go through them and figure out like, who did I talk to? Where was that conversation from? Or like, what was I actually doing? What course was I taking? What book? Whatever it is that I'm doing, I have to figure out where does it fit in that repository so that eventually, maybe a year from now or even a few months from now, I can come back to it. So I suggest you do the same thing. Another good tool that I'm using is called Obsidian. So it allows me to visualize the things on a graph. I'm going to share with you what that looks like. So that's how it works. It's like you tag things and you're able to put them in folders, but I'm not an expert at this. I usually just use Notion because I'm more familiar with it, but I'm still looking for a way to actually just put in everything that I know and learn in just one centralized space so that I can easily access it when I need it. So having a centralized repository of knowledge is not just beneficial for yourself, but once you work in a company, if you've built up this habit of building this thing, then you're actually a better collaborator with the people you're working with. I'm very good at documenting stuff. So a lot of people have looked up to me, especially in my last role at Checkfront, to do the documentation for things like how did we start the project, what is the problem statement, even the Jira tickets, I write them. So what do we have to build, the features that we need to work on. And I also do a bit of QA and log all of that information in. It just makes it easier for people to know what you're working on, what's going on, and like how can they replicate the same exact effort in the future if they pull in someone else. So that's the usefulness of having documentation on projects. And it allows you to see what decisions you've made in the past that led you to where you are in today. So it's like you might be wondering why, like, there is a very good use case of building feature A versus feature B, but like why did people use feature B instead? So having that documented will help the conversation along. There's also no such thing as like communication, like over communication. It's actually better to just communicate all the time than it is to not communicate at all. So having as much information available to people as a succinct and concise way to digest it, like you don't need to create hundreds and hundreds of pages of something. It's actually a good idea to summarize everything. And that way, people who are not in the loop can easily try to understand what it is. If there's someone like a stakeholder that needs to understand what this is that you're working on, then they'll have like a high level view of like what the progress is from a week to week or like a sprint basis. And that really helps. So I find this really helpful because like you get a bird's eye view. This is something that all stakeholders want, especially those at the executive level. They want to see what it is that you're doing. And then for myself, like how this applies to me as a person, I've had so many projects, so many case studies that I can actually work on and feature on my website, but I have to pick and choose which ones are relevant. And so having like an idea of like all the wins, all the projects that I have, like putting them all in one space really helps. One benefit that I can say documenting has helped is like when you're tracking something and you've done it before in the past, you can understand what works and what doesn't. So for myself, I've learned that the projects that have been of the greatest use to my clients and myself are the ones that actually deal with a lot of design systems. So things that cater to my strengths in branding, I can easily digest like what's happening with a design pattern library of one customer and another and create something that reflects that brand that they need or want. So now let's go into a little bit more advanced. So what about research that you've conducted? So something that's very difficult is like how do you communicate the research out to the rest of the company and even yourself? When you've done research, the tendency is that you and your team are the only ones that get to see it and the rest of the people around you don't. And so there are tools like Dovetail that allow you to have a centralized repository for that research. So you can reuse the insights that other people have created from past researches from the past. So when you have like a centralized tagging system, that allows you to understand insights from other people's usability tests and interviews and the research that they've done, and you can try to pull that into coming up with a new insight. It just helps because it's not like you have to dig through tons and tons of stuff. You could like make things happen faster. Whereas I've done a bunch of research in the past in multiple companies that I've worked on, and they didn't have a research repository. So we did have a documentation for like what happened in the project in the context of the project itself, but that didn't easily translate to like how can you reuse these insights that you have in the past and use them for another project because you've already done something. So there's a tendency for whenever people come in for the first time, because they don't have access to the research that is relevant to the current thing that they're working on, and maybe the person has already left, then there's redundancy of work, especially if people keep leaving from the company. So in your case, you might do that too. Like I might do the same thing. Like if I didn't document all the steps that I took in order to get to a particular state, then I might just be reading the same book or reading the same content and having to reorient myself again and again. So what actually helps me right now is that at least I have AI to help speed things up. Like I don't have to reread everything. I could just go to AI and type like the prompt that I need. But it actually helps if I have a place that just stores all of that information for me. And that will really streamline the process. Eventually, if let's say my repository of knowledge becomes big enough, I might even connect AI to it so that it can reference all the knowledge that I have. But that's more of like a project that I want to do in the far future. I really don't have time for it, and I still have to manually go through my notes. Like there's just a lot to do. It's a lot of work, but I feel that it pays off eventually. Okay, so again, this is more like a reminder that, you know, the knowledge that we're consuming today may not be there and available for you tomorrow. So I actually thank my past self for doing a lot of revisions to my portfolio and then storing them in the same website. That way, I actually see how much I've grown from point A to B. And looking back 10 years ago, my designs, the designs that I was so proud of, feel so weird. It's like in terms of typography, the color contrast, the choices of words, the way I present them, my copy, everything is like there's such a huge improvement. It also allows you to sort of like improve as you go, because it allows you to see like what are your weaknesses and what could you do better. And I think this is a weakness of mine. Like I knew in the past, like I was talking to my team in my previous company, and like our mentor said that, or our director also said that it might be a good idea to have this. I was like procrastinating about it, but eventually I got there where like I'm starting it, I have one, and it's been useful to me so far. Because if I really wanted to go back and understand, like let's say I'm building a business right now, what are the strategies to talk to people? What are the questions that I should be asking? And how should I approach every conversation? Like these are things that I might not remember. I will remember them if I practice them again and again, but it takes a lot of time. Even if you practice something in the moment, it doesn't mean that you'll remember it like if you stop doing that for like 6 months. So it's kind of like going swimming or riding the bicycle. You may never really lose the knowledge, but it takes some time. It takes a lot of time to get ramped up again, to feel confident again that you can do things. I feel that way when I was driving, because I got my license in the past, and then when I decided to finally drive, I was so anxious and scared. Like I didn't know if I could actually drive again. I didn't know if like the knowledge was still there with me, but eventually I got it back. So if I could put that into words in a piece of paper, I will remember. Okay, in summary, I believe that having a repository of knowledge is very important, and I would highly suggest that you do it if you haven't started yet. And there are many guides on like how you can best do it, but like you don't have to be perfect. That's always something that I tell myself. Even if you're starting to just write things down, even if you're just creating a daily note of like, what have you learned today? And then organizing them much later on. That's actually better off than trying to be perfect, trying to have like a structure at the start. You'll get there eventually. The most important thing is to just start somewhere. Okay, that's me. And a little life update. So I was very busy the past few days because like my best friend from New York came over. I was really happy to have her. I went around. I visited a lot of places that I normally couldn't go to just because I'm shy. So it's like reaching out to people and asking them to go to places with me is like a struggle. But then it was my best friend who I've known for like more than 15 years. Like I've known her since high school. And so we went around and we talked about life, and we realized how much we've changed. We're still the same, but like I was once a young, angry girl that wore black all the time, and it was strange to learn that I have since then changed. That I now wear a lot of colorful clothing, and that I'm more happy where I am at. Like realizing that and actually finding time to breathe when I'm trying to achieve so many things right now was very helpful for me. It's like just taking the pause, even with all of my goals and objectives, and like feeling bad for myself just because I'm not doing enough, even though a lot of people might say I am doing a lot. So just getting that perspective that, hey, I was just a little girl that didn't know what life had in store for her. And yeah, and just learning how the struggle is real. Like I got to talk to a bunch of people, friends that I've made, and got closer to recently, and I realized that every industry actually has its own ups and downs. My weekend was very, very fun. I totally enjoyed it. I loved the food, and I would do it again. And so I think in the future I might visit my friend. Very excited on planning that trip. But for now, I have other things to do, more videos to talk about, and I'd be interested to know like what you want to learn from me. So happy to connect as well on LinkedIn, and it's surprising that there have been people reaching out to me one by one saying that they've found my content really helpful. So that's a really positive thing to hear, and I wish I could keep giving value to people. That's just that brings me joy, and that's actually the reason why I started this channel. I want to help other people get into UX, or at least like figure out if they really want to be in this profession, but also just share my journey along the way, like share my journey of like establishing my business, my struggles of trying to get a full-time job again, and also just share what it's like living here in Vancouver, that kind of thing. Yeah. If you have any questions, concerns, or comments, feel free to ask me. I usually reply, or try my best to find time to reply. And I will see you in the next one. Bye!